Hey, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. Huck, you're supposed to be the executive producer. You're supposed to be paying attention, okay? She goes, yeah, Dad, I am. All right. How you doing today? Say hello. She's a good girl. Oh, so pretty girl. Oh, so pretty. Oh, so pretty. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna do it. Thanks for everything. Yeah, you're a good girl. Oh, am I keeping you up? Yeah, you're a good girl. Want to say something? Want to say something? Okay. So Huck is going to go play Be a Good Girl, not bark on the program, and we'll get going with a missing person. Oh, she's gonna hang out. All right, we're going to get going with this missing person segment today, and I appreciate you being here. Got a couple of things to do to get it going. The first thing is gotta do a little advertising for an event I'm coming up on. The 2023 MUFON Symposium. It's at the Cincinnati Metro Northern Kentucky Convention Center in Covington, Kentucky, August 24th to 27th. And this is the MUFON newsletter this month. And I gotta say that if I wasn't going, I'd go to here see this guy. Give me a full page in the MUFON magazine this month. So I am the quote-unquote keynote speaker, and I will be talking about Missing 411, the UFO connection. And I'll also be talking about some of the things that didn't make it in the movie. And there was a lot of good stuff that had to do with UFOs, what we learned about. There's a video that we did just recently about kind of an up close on one of the individuals in the movie that we highlighted, Pat McGuire. So it's going to be good. Now, we're into the hiking season, and I've already done 2 hiking videos for you that are up here. But as a reminder, because people go out all the time and they take their pack with them and they really aren't thinking, I'm going to tell you about some things that people would not necessarily be thinking about during the warm summer days. When you get into the higher elevations, first thing you got to think about is keeping warm. And if you're hurt or you get trapped by weather, it's going to get cold at night. And one of those things that I always carry is a pair of gloves. And this is important. See that little statement right there, Gore-Tex? I'm big on Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex is something that allows you to breathe. The article, clothing, gloves, shoes, allows it to breathe but keeps you warm at the same time. And I like gloves that have a strap around them to hold in. Huck goes, hey, what's that sound, Dad? To hold in the heat and keeps out the wet. And up here in northern Montana, we have what's called the Army-Navy stores. And they have a whole wall in there that's nothing but gloves and socks. It's an awesome store. And I'm not paid a dime to say it, but it's a good place to go to find stuff like that. Other thing, I've talked about this before as well, but a lot of you maybe never heard about it. But when you go to the woods, a lot of times you need to use the bathroom sometimes. And I found these a couple years ago, and I got to re-up my supply because I'm getting a little low. But again, I'm not paid at all for anything I'm telling you about. I'm just an experienced hiker and I know what works. This is called the SHT kit. And what it really is it says don't get caught with your pants down. Field toilet kit. 1 toilet paper, wet wipes, disposable bag, hand sanitizer. 1 single use. We've used it. It's outstanding. And an excellent gift for the hiker in your family. And I know you can get them online. I encourage everybody to carry those because you never know when an emergency comes up. And I've been with people in the woods that have had to use leaves before, and it's a little dicey sometimes. Now, 2 things I carry. I always carry like a little carabiner, and people have called this parachute cord, rope, weighs nothing, has a million uses. And I've used it to tie things on my pack. Sometimes your shoelaces break. Like I said, a million uses. Always carry this. And the stuff I'm showing you, not that expensive. The most expensive thing I showed you is the gloves, and that just depends on how far you want to go down the rabbit hole on those. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk to you about today is a company called SOL, Survive Outdoors Longer. And what this is, it comes in a little bag about this big, very small, super light. And this is nothing but a poncho that you pull over your head, and it's waterproof. Now, you may think, oh, I'll never need that. Angie and I were hiking just the other day. Beautiful day, 80 plus degrees out all day. And we're getting off the trail really late, about 8:30 at night. And it just started to sprinkle on us. And you need to have those kind of things because you never know. And we looked at the weather 3 times before we left. No rain, no adverse conditions, just supposed to be a beautiful day. But you never know when you're in the high ground what's going to happen. Super important to understand that. So we're going to get to missing persons cases. And these are some very interesting cases with a focus on soda, Minnesota. I've stated before that I spent a lot of time in Minnesota over the years. I spent a lot of time in the areas I'm going to talk to you about. First place we're going to talk about is an area called Fergus Falls, Corliss Township. Corliss Township is just outside of Fergus Falls. The name of the location of this incident bounced around on many articles I read, so it was hard to really know exactly, but safe to say probably somewhere between Corliss and Fergus Falls. So what I did, printed out a map for you on Fergus Falls. Fergus Falls right here. This is North Dakota, Cheyenne National Grassland, South Dakota, Minnesota, Fergus Falls, Sauk Center, Alexandria, Park Rapids. You kind of get a feeling. This is the far western part of Minnesota. Gotcha? Okay. So you have an understanding where we're talking about. The articles on this story never released the boy's name. They said it was a son of Charles Weigert, 5 years old, missing May 11th, 1913. Before 1920, it was very rare to give the name of a child in newspaper articles. Ask me why? I have no idea. Whether it was a privacy issue or something else that I just don't understand. I don't get it. It was indiscriminate. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But Fergus Falls was founded in 1856 by a Scottish trapper. In 1870, it was incorporated. And when I did the background work on this town, I was stunned to see something. So Harvey Pratt, my best buddy, lives in Oklahoma. And we were traveling around doing research one day, and we went through this town just outside of Oklahoma City, and he said, "Hey Dave, this town has a lot of bad notoriety." I go, "Why is that?" He goes, "They've had 2 huge tornadoes go through here in 10 years. He says, just about the time the town got rebuilt, another huge one went through and destroyed it again. I go, "You're kidding. How odd is that?" Well, apparently it's not so odd, because there's historical significance. Fergus Falls had 2 huge tornadoes go through the town. And the worst one was on June 22nd, 1919. And it was the second deadliest tornado in Minnesota history ever. 57 people died. Hit about 4:46 p.m., destroyed 159 homes, and one 3-story hotel where many of the people died. You know, I don't know. I've been in Minnesota a long time. I just don't think about tornadoes in Minnesota, but obviously they're there. Some of the highlights for Fergus Falls, if you ever get there, is they have something called the Otter Trail Scenic Byway. It's a 150-mile loop that travels through 1,000 lakes, and you can ride it by bus, car, or bike. And then they have the Otter Trail River that runs through it. Average temperature in July is about 80 degrees. Average temperature in January is about 9 degrees. Minnesota is one of those states where the temps fluctuate greatly. Now, the Weigert family had 2 children. The oldest was a son at 5 years old. Now, what precipitated this event that we're talking about here is their youngest child was having a christening celebration at their house. They invited family, friends, neighbors. A lot of kids were there. And everyone was outside. It was a beautiful May day, May 11th, 1913. And at about 4 p.m., suddenly the weather changes and it starts raining. But it doesn't start raining, just dribbles. It came down like buckets. And everyone was running for cover. A lot of people ran home. A lot of people ran in the house, took cover under trees, but it was really coming down. About 4 o'clock. It wasn't long after that Mr. Charles Weigert, the dad, and his wife realized that they couldn't find their son. They knew that was odd. So they start first searching on their own, and then they started to get the people back that were there to help them search. It was still raining. They asked people if they had seen their son, and they had earlier, but not lately. And nobody had seen where he went, which was extremely troubling. But they get about half the people back, and they search through the night nonstop, calling his name, looking in crevices and niches. The area was described by several reporters as very thick woods, marshy, rural. That's like every place in Minnesota, unless you're in downtown Minneapolis. But, and really lots of mosquitoes. Almost every man in that community from 50 miles away came to help. They weren't hearing anything. They weren't finding any tracks. The rain had washed things away. But after that first day of searching nonstop, the ladies in the community started to serve food to all the searchers. 4 days later, on May 15th, the rain continued to fall. It was nonstop on the searchers. But the men in that community would not give up. 10 days in, May 21st, unbelievably, the search was still going on. The searchers were physically and emotionally exhausted. Several articles said Mrs. Weigert was said to be insane with grief. Imagine you're having a special event, christening your new young baby daughter, and simultaneously lose your son. That's almost crazy. So this is about 40 miles east of the North Dakota border. Thousands of lakes, bogs in the region. The boy was never named, and the boy was never found. Today I started to think about how many cases I've told you about where young children have disappeared on property that they grew up on, property they knew. It's astonishing. And then parents are left to pick up the pieces of their life, look at the same property again for the rest of their life after they've lost that child. That's a horrible outcome. I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could go out and work those fields after that. It would seem cursed to me. That's just me, though. But I've heard this. I've heard similar things from other families. So in this case, you have water, marshes everywhere. You have weather. You have a weather event that causes the separation between the parents and the son. And all of you, at times, I've had hundreds of you during a month ask of the religious association with the family. And I just told you, they were having a special religious event when this happened. Pretty strange. Next case. This happened in Brainerd, Minnesota, north central part of the state, east of where this event that I just spoke of happened. Man's name was Hans Knudson, 75. Went missing July 15th, 1928, late in the afternoon. About 3 miles north of Brainerd. Now, Brainerd's population now is about 14,300 people. It's in the Ojibwe territory. In the 1800s, that was a primary Native American tribe. And that tribe was known to sell blueberries to the settlers. And the city itself straddles the Mississippi River. Early in the 1800s, the Northern Pacific Railroad president got to name the town after his wife's maiden name. It's kind of funny, I think. At the time it wasn't funny, but now it's funny. Probably the biggest historical event that ever has happened in Brainerd happened October 27th, 1933. That was when the Babyface Nelson gang held up the first nationwide Brainerd Bank. You don't think that was big news? Since the 1930s or 40s, the population of Brainerd has been pretty consistent, somewhere between 10 and 15,000 always. Now, like I said, I've spent at least 10 summers, parts of 10 summers in Brainerd, know it well. Let me say, the people in that town, some of the nicest I've ever met. Really. And I don't know if it was because they knew I was part of the hockey community that was there, because that was a big thing that subsidized the town. I just think they're just that way. Now, Brainerd also has notoriety because right on the Brainerd-Baxter border, it's a Superfund site. What happened was the Burlington Northern Railroad from 1907 to 1985 had a wastewater treatment plant where they would dump all their waste into an unlined pond. And it really turned into a bad scene. I was there, and there were people that lived near there that couldn't use their wells. It was bad. And I haven't been there in a number of years, and I'm not sure what the status of the Superfund is, but the community was upset. Now, Hans Knudson, the 75-year-old man who disappeared, he was a resident of 515 10th Avenue in Northeast in Brainerd. His daughter lived in the community. Well, on the 15th, the daughter invited her dad and friends to go 3 miles north of Brainerd and go blueberry picking, right adjacent to the Mississippi River. Now, I should say this, when you think about the Mississippi River, it is not the Mississippi River that you think of in Brainerd. It's nothing like the Mississippi that is in your front of your head. It's like a standard size, medium river that flows through many cities in the Northwest. It's probably just big enough that you can't cross it in Brainerd. And then again, maybe on late in the summer you can, but that's where it starts up there in northern Minnesota. So the family's going blueberry picking, and that makes a lot of sense because, like I said, the Native American tribes would sell blueberries to the settlers as they came through. Well, late in the day, on July 15th, 1928, daughter starts looking around for Hans. Sometime in the middle of the day, they lost track of each other. Couldn't see each other, but they both knew that about 4 o'clock they'd make their way to the car. Now, I will remind you that this far north in North America, the sun stays up till about 10 p.m. So things grow hardy and healthy during these months. And so she made it to the car. The daughter made it to the car about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Waited for her dad. He didn't come back. She started yelling, calling his name, went into the woods looking for him. Well, unbeknownst to her, Hans thought she was lost. So he was in the woods looking for her. Now, none of the newspapermen explained how they knew this because they never said Hans told them this. And I tend to think that this was a made-up story by reporters. I'm just saying. Well, the daughter hung around the car till about 10 p.m., calling the dad's name, etc. And when it started to get dark, she headed out of the area and called law enforcement. They came to the area very late at night, too late to really go in and do any serious searching. But on July 16th, 50 police officers, U.S. Forest Service personnel, Brainerd police, sheriffs, and family friends all helped looking for Hans. Search and rescue started at about 6 a.m. and was confined to a 2-mile radius from the car, which is standard protocol. It's a good way to start. Well, as the day went on, they weren't finding anything. And the searchers started to push out further. Well, a couple of searchers are walking along the banks of the Mississippi. Again, I told you, not a big river in this area. As they're walking along, they see a man laying on his back up ahead, not moving. They come up to him. It's Hans. His eyes are barely open. He's not moving. He's barely alive, they think. They call for more search and rescue people. They get there. And they notice that his shoes aren't on. He's not moving. Well, they get enough search and rescue people there, and they get a litter together, and they put them on the litter, and they get them to a car, and they take them to Brainerd, where you can get medical attention. Feed them some more food when they get there. Now, the article stated that he was missing for about 2 days. Actually, he was missing for about a day and a half. And they stated that he had no food and no water for the majority of that time, which I think is impossible, folks. Now, the article said that he drug himself to the river to get water. So there's water. But the article said he had no water. And they also said he had no food. But remember why he was there. It's berry picking. There were berries everywhere. So he either wasn't there during that time, and that's why he had no food, or again, the article's wrong. Hans did say, and the articles did say, he was paralyzed. And he stated he couldn't walk. Searchers used the word paralyzed. There was no explanation why or where his shoes were or were not on his feet. But that is perplexing. If you were paralyzed, how would you get your shoes off? Now, he got to Brainerd, and they said that he was suffering from exposure, mosquito, and bug bites. Suffering from mosquito and bug bites is a guarantee in that area. It's horrific. So let's remind ourselves what happened with this. 50 searchers took 12 hours to find Hans. He should have had sufficient food, all the food he needed from berries. And water there is everywhere. Many UFO abductees claim paralysis. This is a very, very common element to abductions. And many abductees are found without shoes. Now, the shoes issues, we've talked about this before. Some people say, well, maybe they take the shoes off so they can't run through the forest. My personal belief is, I think shoes carry the most bacteria on them of anything we wear. And when abductees go onto a craft, many of them say that the aliens are fastidious about cleanliness and not getting sick. I've heard this hundreds of times. So my personal belief is that the shoes come off because of bacteria. Now, I will say that the way some people's feet smell, maybe the shoes ought to stay on. Okay, just saying. I don't mean to insult anybody out there. Be calm. But Hans fully recovered. And there was no follow-up article with him to explain if he had a conscious memory about what happened. But those were all the details that were mentioned. It's one of those few times where somebody older is found alive. And by the sound of the articles, it sounded like he was very close to dying. But point of separation between he and his daughter, found next to water, as I've stated thousands of times. They were berry picking, missing shoes or clothing, loss of memory. It's all there. Very confusing. Minnesota, northern Minnesota. Very interesting spot. Now, before I let you go, I'm still getting lots of response from the Bigfoot test that we have online. Yes, there's 20 videos I made about Bigfoot. And it was Bigfoot Class 101. You can watch it right here. As you're looking at the screen, bottom left, It says videos. Click on the videos. That take you to all of our videos. And then it's Bigfoot class 1, 2, 3, and you can watch them all. And then at the end, if you think you're really smart, you can take the Bigfoot test. And I still get a lot of people sending in the test. If you pass the test, there's a little reward there. So you can follow the directions and see if you can pass it. But somebody sent me in a note with the test. It was from California. And the person used to live in Bishop and has some real close law enforcement contacts there and sent me a patch. Thank you very much. And in the same little note, she said, "Hey, Dave, Byron Murayama says to say hello." Wow. So Byron is a guy I went to school with in high school. He was a year older than me. And his brother, Dean, and I were best friends. Still are best friends. Talk to each other all the time. Dean became a police officer in California in another city. And I haven't seen Byron in decades, but great family, great people. And I'm humbled that anybody would even remember me this long after not seeing me, but I'm sure Dean tells Byron about me all the time. So, thanks for being here, and take care of yourself. I hope these little hiking hints help out, because they're important, and I'll do more as we go along. In the meantime, be nice to people out there. Smile when you go out in the public. It doesn't cost anything. And the most important thing, love your family. Paulides out.